Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and very good evening. I hope we had a very restful lunch break. Thank you, the esteemed panelists, for joining us today for this very important panel discussion. I would like to start with the first expert on my right, Mohsin Abbas Sayyed Saab. So if I could just raise a very important question from you about the specific provisions in the Act. Are there any specific provisions in the Act related to TIP that address the protection and rights of vulnerable groups such as women and children when they are exposed to trafficking in person? Does Act really specify these details to protect them under such circumstances?
Thank you, Sadia. And I must tell you that it was 2018. I was in Ministry of Law and Justice, and if I correctly remember, Mr. Tariq Malik from FIA came to me and he said that we want to legislate on this subject. And together we then drafted this law. It was at that time the exercise was done as it is in a hurried manner. But there are few good things in this law, and especially the ones you have referred to, is that there is a special protection for children and women. Of course, if the offense will become aggravated offense if the victim is child or victim is a female. So that is something which is really one of the strengths of this law, that we say that this law is. Of course, there are issues, and there are issues with our legal system as far as child is concerned, because the studies say that our childbirth registration hovers around 34%. And if our childbirth registration hovers around 34%, then there is always an issue of age, and determination of age is left to the detailed inquiry to be done by the medical professionals. They too provide an average that this is the average, and that complicates the enforcement of laws, not only this law but other laws as well. So we need to think of it that for our legal system, we must have, not only for our legal system, even for our financial planning, for our educational planning, we must have universal childbirth registration system. The other nations have done it, we can also do it.
Thank you very much. So that's a good insight into the status of the Act that we already have, and it's good to hear that it does have that provision. Unfortunately, the birth registration status is really not hopeful. The stats that tell us that on the basis of which we have to decide and take actions on. So speaking of these legalities, Dr. Syed Kaleem Saab, I would like to come to you with a question about police ensuring that their efforts to combating trafficking are sensitive to the needs of these rights of the survivors. And do we really go for the survivor-centered approach into this whole investigation and case management?
Thank you very much. First of all, my gratitude to Kausan for inviting me over here, and for Juan, who is conducting this program. Thank you very much for inviting me. As far as the human trafficking is concerned and human smuggling is concerned, if you just allow me, I can quickly run through a few of the things. But I would also then return to your questions. We need to understand that legislation which is criminalizing human trafficking and people smuggling, and which includes like we were living with Prevention of Control of Human Traffic Ordinance 2002 for a very long time, and subsequently we came up with the Act in 2018, that is Prevention of Trafficking in Persons, and we made its rule in 2020. We also came up with the Prevention of Smuggling of Migrants Act 2018, and we came up with its rule in 2020. Previously, they were being treated together. The Immigration Ordinance and the Passport Act and all actually comes into play. As far as illegal immigration is concerned, we talk about Foreigners Act 1946, and then if transportation for such illegal entry into Pakistan is arranged by another person for profit, it's like with consent is smuggling, and if it's with coercion and fraud, it's of course trafficking, and we keep on discussing this. And again, we regulate re-entry, presence, and departure, like the FIA is doing through the preventive detention in 3G and providing assistance to person legally 13A, and we have all these sections. Similarly, the unlawful immigration of the migrant and smuggling, we do have the law over there, and which is regulated under 1979. And we also see that there are a lot of international instruments and conventions which Pakistan have come across and ratified recently, especially its protocol. It does talk about United Nations trans-organized crime and its earlier jurisdiction, but now they are more into it, like slavery, human trafficking, and of course related to this forceful smuggling that we're talking about. And internally, we do see that a lot of amendments have been made in Pakistan penal codes, and as from section 359 to 366, which actually has helped police and prosecution. Now, with that, I come back to your question. The problem is we need to understand that FIA is dealing with the cross-border trafficking and smuggling, you can say. And recently, the provincial government have started with the internal trafficking and all those things. But they still need a long way to go. FIA just have about 700 officers who are actually dealing with these human trafficking issues. They have about 20 exit entry points. But the provincial setup has joined very lately, as far as internal trafficking is concerned. They need a lot of capacity building, lot of awareness programs. We need to translate these laws into local languages, introduce them to the institutes, and hold continuous sessions, to actually apprise them. As far as victims are concerned, yes, the victims, still we need to apprise the law enforcement. They are the sufferers, and you need to look after them. You need to give them all the due care and attention. But again, the human traffic and smuggling, it's a big mafia, which involves a lot of people out there, who actually can muscle out through the legal framework that we have.
Right. Thank you. So with this, I understand that we do have implementation of basic human rights or child rights to certain extent, but we need to further improve that handling of cases, especially when it comes to women and children.
Oh, we have all sort of laws. You just think of any law and we will have a law, we have laws. The question is the will, the sincerity, and the capacity and capability to actually enforce. For example, we have Witness Protection Act, witness protection rules, but we have never put that into use, And we also have Hadood Ordinance, which has never been practiced. So there are a lot of things that you make. I'm not for Hadood laws. I'm just making a passing reference that we make laws and we don't implement it. And all these laws which are made comes up with the social values, tradition, cultures, and it's a need of the hour that once it is in vogue, you build capacity, you enforce them, and you follow all the due process which is required.
Correct. Very rightly pointed out. Thank you very much for all of these details. Zulfikar Ali Meher Saab, I would like to shed light some little on this handling by Sindh Police. So after enactment of TIP law in 2018, how Sindh Police is dealing with the TIP cases?
As Dr. Khalil Imam Saab said, that whenever new laws come, new laws and rules, so in police, this is all practical work. So what we did, that we trained our SHOs, IOs, WSCs to apply properly the section of the law, and for IOs to prepare the case and go for prosecution and conviction and monitoring. So I will share that in Sindh we have been successful, that in year 2022 we registered 713 cases for internal trafficking, and there were 572 sex trafficking cases, 131 bonded labor cases, 10 unspecified other exploitation cases. So in 2022 and 23, we have our whole work which we were training and building our team. So that has showed results, and I think that Sindh province example is very successful. That in 2 years we have 713 cases and 406 cases, in 22 and 23. So this has been a very successful implementation of these laws in field. And I think that all the major leading groups, those who are involved in this, we have been able to apprehend them and register cases against them.
Right, right. Thank you. So speaking of, since we are talking about the enactments of these laws, Mohsin Saab, as an expert, what recommendations would you make for improving the Prevention of Trafficking in Person Act 2018, if there is? I mean, we have been hearing that it's already quite a comprehensive, but yet it was made or drafted in a hurry. So is there any room or space for improvement as an expert that you would think of?
Definitely, of course, there is always room for improvement. Of course, this law is something which we are being appreciated internationally. Apart from one, two things, this is the step which has been recognized by the international community that this is a good step forward. But there are, of course, there are issues. Why we have issues with the laws? The main issue with our laws is that laws, whenever the laws, important laws are made, they are always backed up by research. There is a legislative research, we call it, and that research is problem-solving methodology. We call it problem-solving method. What is problem-solving methodology? Problem-solving methodology is that if a society has a problem, and that problem requires some solution, legislative solution. So first of all, what they do is that they recognize the actors, that whose behaviors are problematic, whose behavior are responsible, who are the responsible for creating that problem. And second thing, which a researcher has to do, a subject researcher has to do, is to find out the causes. Mind you, the problem may be the same in UK, USA, or Pakistan, but causes will definitely differ from society to society. Because causes differ from society to society, so we do not have one solution, one shoe fit for all. So we need to have legislatures, separate legislatures, even regional legislatures, even national legislatures, because we need separate laws. Causes are different, and those causes require solutions. Unfortunately, in our case, we do not conduct this research before making laws, and because of that lack of research prelude to the making of laws, we have ineffective laws which are not workable laws, and ultimately we land into the problem in case of Witness Protection Act, that this is a cut and paste law. It has been copied from a foreign jurisdiction, and it has been enacted in different provinces of Pakistan. Now, how come it has not even, in Sindh, this law was enacted, Witness Protection Law was enacted in 2013. And till now, not even a single institution on the basis of that law has been created. No, this is a real-time phenomenon. And talking of this law, just ex officio or off the cuff, I could say that there are certain issues. Issue number one is that although this law says prevention of trafficking in persons, but for prevention there is only one provision. And that too is not a mandatory provision, that is discretionary. So training is discretionary, awareness creation is discretionary, even the other aspects that how this law will be an instrument that these problems or these occurrences may not reoccur, those are lacking. Those need to be made mandatory. Another point with our legal system and with this law is that people are reluctant to report crime. Why? Because our law says that if you have reported crime and your report was turned out to be false, then you can be prosecuted. World over, people are encouraged to report crime. It is for the investigating agency to see that whether that report is correct or incorrect, or maybe there is a reasonable cause, but still that report is incorrect. So it is, the discretion is with the investigating agency, not with the person, and you don't prohibit people from reporting. You encourage people to report. Now that is one of the aspects which I think that need to be corrected. Another aspect is that it's a victim protection. Victim protection is discretionary under this law. Although we have, at the provincial level, we have institutions for child protection institutions are available, and for women shelter homes and Darul Amans are available. Still, we have not made, we can make it mandatory that for victims, these institutions must be available, and it should be mandatory under the law. Then there is no, monitoring and evaluation system. Monitoring and evaluation for these type of laws is very important. That whatever the best law you make, still it has to be practiced. Once it is practiced, you will find out that there are problems with this law. And then you come back to the parliamentarians, you come back to the government and say that these are the problems, these problems need to be resolved. And absence of monitoring and evaluation system has really made our laws, unworkable, and at times they are totally ignored in our society. I have some other suggestions too, but just briefly, this law makes a number of references to other laws, just like penal code and criminal procedure code. Some of those provisions can easily be incorporated in this law. This is called reader-friendly law, that in order to make it a reader-friendly law, legislation by reference should not be made, but that whatever you wanted, that should be incorporated. And last point is victim compensation. Victim compensation is also is by reference to the section 545 of Criminal Procedure Code, which too gives a maximum ceiling. World over, for victim compensation, there is a minimum ceiling and there is no maximum cap. So court is allowed to give higher compensation to the victims according to the facts and circumstances. Now this is something which we need to, just seeing it as it is, we can improve these things. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mohsin Saab. And I think with this input, it's very clear that while having a victim-centered or survivor-centered approach in the legislation, we can remove or address many gaps. And when it comes to providing evidence and research before we start drafting or work on our legislation, I think a lot of gaps can be removed. So great input into these. Speaking of the challenges at the time of drafting, and then when the legislations are drafted, then obviously those challenges and the repercussions are felt later. Dr. Kaleem Saab, I would like to raise a point about the challenges that the police face, because now we know that these legislations or acts, they are drafted sometimes in a hurry, sometimes based on the urgent needs. And when those gaps of research and proper homework is done, then the repercussions are felt at different actors' level. So speaking of police, what challenges do they face in implementing these trafficking in person acts and laws at their level?
Well, I would just, if you allow me, just to recap, with all due respect, when we talk about the financial dimensions of these laws and the evidence collection, especially when we're talking about the prevention of human trafficking and migrants, we need to understand that as we make a case, it has to be relevant. The evidence has to be relevant, it has to be admissible, reliable, complete, and believable. Like you say, clear and easy to understand if we want to prosecute. The legal framework that we are discussing, it does have a lot of ingredients, like it's looking into the account, the oral evidence and the documentary evidence and the circumstantial evidence. We also see, like you asked in the beginning, even the punishment getting enhanced if we find that the victim has been injured during the process, the punishment all goes to 14 years. Whereas for normal human trafficking, it's about 7 years, but it goes to 14 years if you find that the victim has actually suffered, physically. We also see. So when we are talking about evidence collection and a case file preparation against, a victim-centered and human rights-based investigation approach, Rule 12, it does provide a relief in that context. And then we see transaction of crime. Again, we see Rule 9, and we see a law, also sections, where victims are being protected under law, but then it's a duty of law enforcement to ensure that they are able to do that. Regarding the challenges, as you asked me, Meher is there, a very professional officer. Earlier also we had some very professional officers from Sindh over here. In Sindh and Punjab, the bonded labor is the biggest problem, and it's concentrated mostly in agriculture and brick making and carpet making. Is a result of ineffective enforcement of law, and the related departments were supposed to actually take action. The powerful officials who penetrate, perpetuate, the bonded labor despite bonded labor law. That's one of them. Again, we see the perpetrators of sex trafficking and forced labor in Pakistan are not rigorously punished. And often the victims are distrustful of the law enforcement and don't cooperate with the investigation. That is another challenge which comes with the law enforcement face. Lack of human resource and financial resources is another challenge. Only a meager amount of 1.1 billion, that is about 6.2 million, was allocated to FIA and the provincial law enforcement to investigate human trafficking, and which is just peanut, and they can hardly work with those budgets. Again, we see the human trafficking and migrant smuggling investigation in Pakistan are conducted by just 781 FIA officials. Again, it's too low. And Meher can actually testify to it. I don't think we have any specific unit at the provincial level so far who are actually dealing with the internal trafficking. And they are dealing in Punjab, they have established an organized crime unit, maybe that is taking care of that. Due to the lack of understanding of trafficking and of the crime, number of cases registered under PTPA remain low. People don't understand, they need to come and seek redressal. Again, politicization of law enforcement agencies erodes its efficiency. So there's a lot of politics and extraneous pressure, and people get involved. Tenure security, operational autonomy, and professionalism impedes due diligence. So these are some of the challenges which actually compromises the law enforcement proper efficacy, I would say. But then we can also look at the way forward. If you come for the second round, then I would like to chip in over there. There are a lot of measures which have been taken. Those measures need to be sustained, and you need to understand what are some of the best practices, as the honorable panelist will mention. See the international best practices, and you need to have a very close coordination between all the provinces in doing that. Maybe the National Police Management Board can play a very vital role, where all police officers gather once or twice a year to discuss their challenges and to look for the way forward.
Right, right. No, thank you very much. And speaking of the best practices, Zulfikar Saab, which best practices from Sindh Police would you like to share with all of us for the federal level and for other provinces to learn from?
Ma'am, basically, whenever new laws come, then certainly set of rules follow. In police, what we have been doing, that after the enactment of the new law and rules, we build a team. So Sindh Police is a big unit, 1,25,000 personnel, and so we decided that we should have specialized IOs for these laws, because to understand it comprehensively, we needed IOs. So the positive outcome is that the IOs have been trained. Even we have DSPs which are trained in these sections, in these laws, and now they properly apply the sections. They prepare good case file, and they participate in the prosecution and witnesses program. So the success stories has been that we have a case in which 7 years conviction was made, and there are total 12 convictions in Sindh. So this has been the law which was enacted from here. So we have been successful in getting the cases registered and getting convictions, because it is a measure that when we get convictions, then that case file, that cases met the standards of the court, the evidence which is admissible in the court. So these are the very positive outcomes.
So very notable outcomes and lesson learned indeed. So if these are the best practices, Mohsin Saab, we heard that what have been the best practices at the federal level, and when it comes to province level, we heard from Sindh Police as well. I would like to take these best practices to the global level. What best practices have we heard so far, or what learning have we drawn so far from the international communities? What best practices are being implemented in other countries as well that you think we can apply in our context and learn from?
Very good question. I must appreciate. No, you see, there are few things which international community has also, while examining our laws, they do give certain views. And this trafficking in persons law has been specifically criticized for partial non-culpability of the victim. By partial non-culpability of victim, let me explain this, that victim cannot be prosecuted under this law. Victim may be deceived, victim may be defrauded, victim's consent is strict, so victim can't be the accused person under this law. This is good thing about this law, but this is a partial thing. But if the victim is used for drug trafficking, for maybe sex trade, then invariably victim lands as an accused. Now the studies, international studies show that in Pakistan, talking of drug trafficking, the carriers which actually carry drugs from one place to other, their entire financial worth is less than that one consignment which they are carrying. Entire financial worth. Now this itself shows that they are victim. That carrier is a victim. That carrier is not a drug trafficker. Now this aspect is, we need to address this aspect. It is easy to, you see, prosecute a person from whom drug is recovered. But it is difficult to say that it is, he or she is the victim, actually. Now, and invariably victim of trafficking. Now, this is one aspect on the basis of which our law has been criticized internationally, that it does not address total non-culpability of the victim. This is one aspect. Second aspect is also centered around victim, that we do not have a victim-centric approach. That we have already said that at least to start with, we may have, for children and women, we already have institutions. So we can use those institutions for their protection, and not only for their protection and shelter, but also for their rehabilitation, for skill development, and for their induction in the job market. So this is the entire package which we need to have, because the victims invariably suffer a lot of trauma, and that trauma can only be, you see, addressed through state measures, maybe with the help of private sector. Of course, there need to be an actuarial analysis that how much it will cost, and where from we'll have that cost redressed. Maybe if the state doesn't have resources, we may generate resources from the private sector. I'm not saying that we need to beg from our foreign donors. I am of the view that whatever we need to do, maybe we start humbly, but we need to start. And this is our house. We have to put this in order, and we have to resolve our problems and problems of our people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Kaleem Saab, Mohsin Saab just expressed his opinion around the coordination or the need of collaboration as well. How do you think that we can improve the coordination and collaboration among law enforcement agencies, government departments, other civil society organizations that are working on this step? So what steps do we need to take to improve, to enhance the implementation of anti-trafficking laws?
Right. Before you begin, sir, this will be the last question for the session. Then the forum will be open for the audience. We'll take up a couple of questions and then conclude.
Okay, thank you.
I will just add to my eminent panelist over here. You see, when we are talking about victims, yes, we have sympathies for the victims. Yes, victims are exploited, coerced, and they are even tricked and frauded into it. But try to see the difference between human trafficking and human smuggling. And I keep saying that trafficking is where a person is deceived, and smuggling is where a person has a consent. So when they go with consent, many of them, when they go to the court, many of them end up in compromises, and they would withdraw their statements because of their family pressures and peers who actually introduced to these culprits, and when we see that because of those compromise, many of the actual traffickers get away. That's one of the challenge. Another domain that I would like to touch before I answer your question on coordination is that we need to address the reasons for trafficking in Pakistan, the reasons for smuggling in Pakistan. And as we strengthen our law and our institution and our due process, we need to see that why people are going abroad and why do they want to risk their lives and put everything in their basket and go abroad. The reason is poverty, and they want to go for poverty. Second is unemployment. We need to address these. Plus, they see many of their relatives emulate their acquaintances who have prospered abroad, and they believe that they can also go and prosper. Domestic violence is another situation where you would see that irrespective of the social class, many of the people would like to go, and then subsequently they end up being a victim. Again, because of the lack of self-esteem, lack of guidance, love from their families, many of the youths would like to go, and even many of the minority are going through this. When we talk about like Hazaras and Hindus in Sindh and many others. And one of the important aspect I think which we forgot over here was trafficking in youth for the purpose of moving organs. Again, we see when they go abroad, they all are looking for a shortcut. They're all looking for some short-term money, and they would also do that. So there is no proper guidance centers, as you just mentioned. Lackluster approach again, and lack of coordination among the international agencies also add to that problem. Very quickly, like how can we actually improve? Again, public awareness programs should be conducted. And the multi-stakeholders of the various organizations, it's not just the police, it's the health, it's education, it's the administration, maybe the local councillors, maybe the politicians, all those people who have a say in their area, they need to play a very important role. And it's necessary for government to supervise and streamline the activities of travel agents. They trick people into it. International covenants should be adhered to in immigration and migration policies. Let's do that. And finally, we have that on-talk review mechanism, and we have included 3 of those provisions which were existing in the protocol, and recently Pakistan has ratified them. And human trafficking should be curbed by increased cooperation, like you just mentioned, and law enforcement should understand the new trends which are coming, especially in the context of cybercrime, AI, and all this is going to add to the the things which are ongoing over here. So the capacity building programs and a political approach towards all complaints. You need to address and look into every complaint so that you are able to answer them. And again, adequate resources. If you want good cooperation, and there should be a pool, where these money, is actually going to save lives. And lastly, the technology and adoption of international best practices are essential for the cooperation that you just mentioned, ma'am, and it's so vital. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kaleem. And I think maybe we can open the floor for question and answers.
Okay, I see a hand raised here. Can the ushers please bring okay, we have a question from here.
Assalamu alaikum. I am Mrs. Rubina Tasawwur. I just wanted to ask one thing. We have discussed many things since morning. We discussed Rizwana case. I was the one who raised voice for her because she belonged to my city, and I knew her. I knew her family, and we were just supporting them in every way. But when the case comes to the court, what happened on the very first hearing? Mrs. Somi Asam, unfortunately, she was also a known figure to me, like some sort of family friend also. So she was granted bail. So we had the laws, we had the rules, we had everything. But where is the implementation? As far as Rizwana is concerned, like she was sent to the judge home, and for 6 months, nobody went there. Now we said ki, like we shouldn't do the victim blaming, we shouldn't blame the parents and everything. But even if they have sent her for any labor or anything, why was she not visited even once by her mother, by her sister, by her brothers, by her father? Like there were many elders in her home, but nobody visited her. So one thing is that. Secondly, I wanted to say there are hundreds and thousands of kids right now. They are doing labor in our homes. I will say in our homes. If somebody is doing some labor in my neighborhood, that is also my home. If in my mother's place, it's also my home. But rules are there, but where is the implementation? We have the institutes. Why institutes are not performing their role, what they have to play? So dilemma is only one thing: implementation. If you went to any garage, the kids are there, they have been beaten by the tools. If you visit any of the home, the kids are there, especially the boys. More than the girls, the boys are the victim. They have been beaten, then they become the criminals. When they have been beaten, so punishment has no influence on them. So kindly, we need to work on this thing, that how we have to implement everything. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. So it's more like an opinion, or do you have a specific question from any particular panelist? Or I think it was an opinion that you wanted
Ji
to
ma'am,
share.
anyone can answer me that how can we implement these rules in our society? Anyone can.
Ji, please.
Thank you. I think I did address this aspect. You see, the problem is with our laws is and with our legal system is that it is not backed by research. So if it is not backed by research, no, our normal course of action is that something is happening, some bad thing is happening, all right, punish the wrongdoer. Punishment is normally the solution of last resort. Societies have learned that behaviors do not change just by prescribing punishment, unless you have a complete system. That's why I said that the basic ingredients of legislative research is: first, you need to know the problem. Second, you need to know the actors whose behavior is problematic and whose behavior is causing the problem. And third, what are the causes? Why they are behaving badly? Why they are, and there is a formula, we call it ROCEP. It's a combination of different words, terms, and that suggests that behavior, human behavior, has objective basis and subjective basis too. So those need to be identified, and then those causes of behavior need to be, there need to be solutions for those causes. And every society have a different causes and different solutions. And those solutions then are tested on the basis of international comparison and also cost-benefit analysis. Cost-benefit analysis is financial cost-benefit analysis, environmental cost-benefit analysis, and social cost-benefit analysis. This is what we call the legislative research. That should be the prelude before we venture upon drafting any laws. So that research is lacking, and when the research is lacking, and society-specific research, then we have these type of results. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohsin Saab. I think we can take one more question.
Yes, please. I'm Shaukat Khan. I would like to communicate with Kaleem Imam Sahib. Well, I'm a consultant myself. I have a company where we send people abroad through legal means, and like we have sent a lot of people to Europe, to UK, to Canada, to even to the US for studies. Like I would also like to add a point to your, to add some more points to your, like there's not one reason why people move abroad. Like there is a whole host of reasons like education, religious liberty, a way of life, culture, opportunity. So like if we just stick to one economic reason, I think like it would be too limited. Too limited. So there's a whole host of reasons why people move abroad from here. Like also, I would say that how would you define the human trafficking inside the borders, inside the country? Thank you.
And your question is from anyone, from any of the experts? Okay.
What was your question in the end?
Well, I asked like, how would you define human trafficking inside the borders, inside the country, like here in Pakistan?
Well, inside Pakistan is like forced labor, bondage, debt bondage, and again, we have seen cases where people have been forcefully moved out from one, and they have moved out because of a climate change also. They have moved out because of certain law and order situation over there. And we have also seen that people have exploited others, for the sake of jobs and lure them to move to the urban part of the countries. So this is a subject, a topic, which is least discussed. There's a lot of human trafficking which is going on internally, and finally we have addressed it through a law, and we have made the provincial governments and the police administration to look into that aspect. The fact remains that this is happening. People are moving out, and there are various reasons. Like one of our respected audience lady over here asked us, why is it happening? It's all happening because के आपका मिजाज कैसा है, culture कैसा है, values क्या exist कर रही हैं, traditions क्या हैं, literacy level क्या है, and all these things actually affect why someone wants to move out. Again, इसके enablers and drivers हैं, push and pull factors हैं. Why would someone like to go abroad and or get into a trap of human trafficking and smuggling is because of the opportunities which is not available to him. Again, because of the education system. Again, because of, you can say, the family, the community, the norms which are prevailing in that region, which actually gives him a push and pull factors to move out of that. And again, I would reply your question with the segment that the response, For me, these laws are very important, and I think it was a need of the hour, and it's not being implemented because, again, of the will, of the capacity, of the resources, and because of the understanding that, well, they are not accountable for it in the end, one can say.
Thank you very much. And I think with this, we can conclude.